Hey everybody, what's going on? You're probably not going to be surprised when I say this, but the Montreal Canadiens had yet another busy week. It started off on Monday where the Montreal Canadiens traded Tyler Toffoli to the Calgary Flames, and it finished off on Friday just before I started recording this. The Montreal Canadiens hired Vincent Lecavalier to be special advisor to hockey operations, along with Nick Bobrov to be co-director of amateur scouting for the Habs. Let's dive into these moves and talk about some of the improvements that Martin St. Louis has made as head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. Now let's start with the Tyler Toffoli trade. The Montreal Canadiens dealt Tyler Toffoli to the Calgary Flames for a first-round pick that is top 10 protected in the 2022 draft, along with prospect Emil Heineman, who was a former second-round pick in 2020 from the Florida Panthers, who was later dealt in the Sam Bennett trade to Calgary and is now Montreal Canadiens property, along with a fifth-round pick and Tyler Pitlick to make the salaries work. Now, I think this is a fine move at the surface. I'm a little surprised that this was the biggest package that the Montreal Canadiens could obtain for Tyler Toffoli, but with that being said, it's a very solid return. You're getting the exact pieces you want to start a rebuild or a retool, whatever you want to call it, and I think this is the first stepping stone, which is saying that the Montreal Canadiens are indeed going to be going into a rebuild. I don't know how long that's going to take, whether it's 2, 3, 4 years, but it appears that the Montreal Canadiens are now headed in that direction because Tyler Toffoli still had 2.5 years remaining on his contract, and what that says is the Montreal Canadiens don't plan on winning during that time span. So I do believe that this is a smart trade for the Habs to make, and Tyler Toffoli should be a great addition as well for the Calgary Flames. Now, I think whether or not this trade ends up being a fine trade or a trade that the Montreal Canadiens win depends on what Emil Heineman turns into with this Montreal Canadiens team. I don't think it's a surprise that the Habs did trade for a guy like Heineman because they like his skating, they like what he brings to the table in terms of his shot. But if you listen to what Ken Hughes has said already as Montreal Canadiens general manager, they want players that are closer to being NHL ready in terms of prospects. So if they can take that second rounder from 2020 rather than taking a 2022 second round pick, that's the direction they're going to go. And I do believe that is the right decision in terms of management. In terms of what's going to happen next for the Montreal Canadiens, it appears that Ben Chiarot should be traded over the next week or 10 days, according to Pierre Lebrun of The Athletic and TSN, and I do believe that makes a lot of sense. You don't want to risk having your asset get more injured than he already was. There was an injury scare with Ben Chiarot last week, and I think the best thing the Montreal Canadiens do right now is tell the people that are bidding for Ben Chiarot, get your best offers in, make whatever pitch you're going to make to acquire Ben Chiarot, because it appears that the Montreal Canadiens are looking for a similar return to that of David Savard at last year's trade deadline, who was acquired for a first and third round pick. But don't be surprised if the Montreal Canadiens go the route of a former first round pick, one from 2021 or 2020 in this trade, and I think that makes a lot of sense, whether it's the St. Louis Blues or the New York Rangers or Florida Panthers. This appears to be something that should happen within the next week or 10 days for the Montreal Canadiens. In terms of the hirings of Vinny Lecavalier and Nick Bobrov, if you look at Lecavalier, you know his track record as a player, and I think he's going to bring a lot to the front office in terms of that player experience, and I do believe that is a smart hire for the Montreal Canadiens. I know a lot of people are going to say it's becoming a friend circle in this Montreal Canadiens brass, but I don't believe that's the case. Vinny Lecavalier wanted to be part of this Montreal Canadiens organization for some time now, and I think this does make a lot of sense in terms of bringing him on board and having him be a scout or a special advisor for the Habs front office. It's something that doesn't really have any downside, so I do believe that the Montreal Canadiens made a smart hire here. In terms of Bobrov and him running the draft along with Martin Lapointe for the Montreal Canadiens, I think this is going to be interesting because if you look at his draft record and his track record as a European scout and just other things that he's done in the National Hockey League, you get the sense that he's someone that isn't afraid to take risks in terms of who he does draft and who his scouting team does select in that first round or in the later rounds of the draft. And I think that's something that Montreal Canadiens have been missing over the last decade. So I think it'll be interesting to watch this year's draft and the coming ones to see how the staff adjusts in terms of the way they select their players. That's it for me today from Cook's Corner. As always, comment down in the comment section down below what you thought of the Montreal Canadiens Tyler Toffoli trade along with the most recent hirings and what you think the package will be that ultimately trades Ben Chiarot from the Montreal Canadiens. I'm Zach Cook. We'll see you later.